So in this video I'm going to be taking my Packard Bell Platinum 2220 and we're going to reflash the BIOS on here from the stock Amy BIOS, and we're going to put Mr. BIOS on it instead. So I won't delve too much into Mr. BIOS because I'll have a whole separate video talking about Mr. BIOS itself. But Mr. BIOS is basically a whole bunch of different BIOSes provided by Microid Research Incorporated, as we can see from the README file here on the Packard Bell computer. And the one that I'm flashing here is for a Packard Bell 680 class mainboard. Now that this mainboard that's in this is a 685, but that mainly just means that it has the MMX support for the Pentium processor and the S3 Verge 3D graphics chip. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same as the 680 stock board, and it's basically for the Intel NV430VX chipset, as we can see from there, which they also call Orlando or Tampa. And it originally, as I said at the beginning, uses an Amy BIOS, which you can see the version of it there as well. So this is basically just a README file, and it's basically going to tell us what the support is. Now, primarily the reason I'm putting Mr. BIOS on this system is because I want to have logical block addressing support on there, so I can put a hard drive larger than 8 gigabytes on here, because it does have the 8 gigabyte limit with the stock BIOS on there. So Mr. BIOS will allow LBA support to be enabled, and that will allow me to go to 127 gigabytes of storage space. It gives some other advantages as well, but like I say, I'll talk all about Mr. BIOS in a separate video. This is basically just to see the flashing procedure and hopefully a successful flashing on this Packard Bell. So what I've done here is I've got all the files loaded on the 5 1/4 inch disk. I have a high density 1.2 megabyte 5 1/4 disk in the B drive, which is what we've got the BIOS on, and then my boot disk has got something in the 3.5 inch disk drive. And so the computer will boot from the 3.5 inch disk, and then I'll use the 5 1/4 inch disk to do the flashing. And hopefully we'll be able to try to get as much of the recording as possible on the computer there instead of through the camera here with VGA 240. Hopefully I'll be able to run that with the BIOS flashing. So let's go ahead and restart the computer and get this underway. So here is the normal BIOS loading screen. Again, it has Amy BIOS on there, version 1.00.08.DNOR. So it's actually got an older BIOS on there to begin with. But Mr. BIOS should give it a whole lot more capability. Again, hopefully this is successful flashing. There, now we have DOS showing up on that side. So let's go ahead to our 5 1/4 disk drive, do a directory listing, and let's run Mr. Flash and let's see what it has to say. So Mr. BIOS Flash Loader and System BIOS for Intel NV430VX. Intel BIOS, so that's what we've got as listed. Warning, be advised, before running this flash loader utility, be advised of this motherboard's unforgiving design. The flash chip, yeah, that's what I don't like about this. The flash chip is soldered to the system board. The flash does contain fail-safe recovery code, but in order to restore the original BIOS, you must create a backup copy of the original BIOS with this flash loader utility. Blah, 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 blah. Tap OK to accept risk and bring up menu. Okay, let's copy the flash into a backup file. And that will write a backup copy of the current BIOS onto the 5 1/4 disk. Okay, backup completed successfully. Let's compare the flash to the backup file. And make sure that the checksums and everything are correct. Okay, flash compared. Alright, let's transfer new BIOS into flash. File name is V09AB5NI.BIO. Press Y to commence. Now see, this of course is the part that I don't like, because the floppy drive has stopped. So that assumes it has flashed. But of course, I'm afraid to restart it. But now unless I've got some verification here. Let me take a look at something real quick. Wow, it's hot. So out of curiosity, I just loaded Windows 95 Safe Mode command prompt and then loaded the flash off the disk, but I renamed it to update.bio, and now you can see that it has actually flashed it successfully. I would be annoyed if the reason was simply needing to change the file name to something more recognizable or boot it a different way. But anyway, let's see what happens when we reboot the computer with Mr. BIOS. Mr. BIOS. Now you should see it on the computer as well. And that makes sense, because yeah, the battery is corrupt because we just flashed the BIOS. Plug and play card initialization complete. Press any key to continue. MMX CPU, 199 megahertz, 60 megabytes memory, 256K cache. Assume it will take me into the setup. And there it is. Unfortunately, the setup is not showing up on the computer over there. Let me just bring this over here. So far, at least, that proves that we have a successful flashing of the computer. And look at all the nice information we got. CPU type, revision, megahertz, ratio, cache, memory, serial ports, parallel ports. PS2 mouse, of course, it's not detecting that. All our IDE channels. BIOS date, the chipset. FDD 0. Obviously, we need to specify the 5 1/4 because that's been reset. Energy management, and we don't need any spin down. We don't need to do any of that. Clock, daylight savings, and keyboard. Unlock state of boot up. I want that on. See, floppy. We have 5 1/4. 1.2, and of course we can have drives 2 and 3, so we can add 2 more floppies to this if we want to. And drive A is floppy 0, so we can even tell it which floppy to potentially boot from. ATA stuff. So drive C, disk 0. No RAID group, antivirus protection, IDE slave detection, legacy type. And it's detecting the iOmega zip as a CD-ROM because it's in a TAPI device. More boot sequence. Let's see. Yeah, floppy A's first. Permit boot from A, permit boot from C, drive C assignment. IDE, power on memory test full, system warm-up delay. So the defaults, of course, are the stars, I think. 6 seconds. Control-Alt-Escape for setup. Control-Alt-Enter for menu. onboard, SPP. Extended capabilities port. This Windows is probably going to redetect a whole bunch of hardware to install. Oh yeah, security setup. Cache, enable. Shadowing, I'm going to go with that. Chipset. FPM EDO memory type. Had nanosecond, that's fast. So, PCI. Oh, USB port. Definitely need USB ports enabled because there's USB ports on here. So you can see recovery, oscillator frequencies. Family EDO memory type. PCI bus. Plug and play device configuration auto. Eliminate F10 to record and exit. Starting Windows 95. Hey guys, Brian here. Do me a favor and click that like button down below, and while you're at it, go ahead and click the subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content when I post it. See you guys in the next one.